Priscilla Presley thought she'd heard every recording Elvis ever made, until 20 years after his death, when she pressed play on a forgotten tape buried inside a Graceland storage box. What she heard wasn't a song or a rehearsal. It was his last private message, and her reaction stunned millions. Graceland felt different on August 16, 1997. 20 years had passed, yet thousands stood at the gates holding candles that flickered like tiny stars. The crowd murmured softly, a mix of prayer, memory, and quiet devotion. Every year felt emotional, but this anniversary carried a weight that pressed against the summer air. Inside the mansion, away from the lights and voices, Priscilla moved through a long hallway lined with storage rooms. The walls smelled of dust and time. Some rooms were packed with stage outfits. Others held fan letters stacked in endless rows. She had spent years organizing these spaces, yet somehow, something always surfaced when she least expected it. She stepped into one of the deeper storage rooms. The overhead bulb buzzed weakly, casting a pale circle of light. Old amps were stacked in one corner. A box of scarves from the Vegas years sat near the wall. And then she saw it, a cardboard box pushed behind a set of unused speakers. It was labeled in faded marker, "Audio, Personal." Something about the handwriting made her pause. It wasn't a catalog tag. It wasn't written by a staff member. It looked familiar. She pulled the box forward. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts as she opened the lid. Inside were tapes, dozens of them, some labeled, some blank, some cracked by time. Most were things she had seen before. Rehearsal recordings, message drafts, moments Elvis captured out of habit. But one tape didn't look like the others. It had no title, no description, just a tiny handwritten date on the corner of the label. A shaky scrawl that made her heart thump once, hard. She lifted it toward the dim light. Her breath hitched. Her fingers tightened around the plastic. For a moment, the sounds of the crowd outside faded away. The room felt too still, too quiet, as if it were waiting for her to understand the importance of what she was holding. The date was smudged, but readable. Her chest tightened. Had this been sitting here for 20 years? Why hadn't anyone cataloged it? Why today, of all days, had it appeared? She lowered herself onto an old wooden crate, still holding the tape like something fragile. The handwriting was unmistakable. She had seen it on love notes, grocery lists, gifts he left for Lisa Marie, even the small messages he taped onto his guitars. It was Elvis's handwriting. A soft shiver moved through her. She wasn't sure if it was fear, longing, or something deeper. Something she didn't yet have a name for. She turned the tape over again, searching for anything she might have missed. Nothing. Just that date. Just that shaky scrawl. The crowd outside grew louder for a moment, singing one of his songs together. The melody drifted faintly through the walls, soft and warm. Priscilla looked down at the tape. She felt a strange pull, a quiet whisper inside her. Open it. Play it. Hear him again. She took a slow breath. Then she read the date more clearly. And the moment she saw it, truly saw it, her breath stopped. Priscilla stared at the tiny handwritten date on the tape's label, her pulse thudding in her ears. The numbers were uneven, almost shaky, but still clear enough to read. August 15, 1977, midnight. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't possible. Elvis died the next day. She held the tape closer, as if her eyes might be wrong. But no, those digits were burned into the plastic like a quiet truth frozen in time. The room seemed colder now. Even the faint hum of the archive lights felt distant, almost muted, like the world was leaning in to listen. She needed help. Someone she trusted. She walked quickly down the hall and reached the office of Frank Delgado, one of Graceland's longest-serving archivists. He had spent decades cataloging Elvis's belongings, from handwritten notes to stage jewelry. If anyone knew where this tape came from, it was Frank. He looked up when she stepped inside. "You all right?" he asked. "You look pale." Priscilla held out the tape. "Have you ever seen this before?" Frank took it carefully, adjusting his glasses. He turned it over, studied the loose reel inside, then squinted at the date. A line formed on his forehead. "No, I've never seen this in any index. He shook his head slowly. And I've gone through nearly everything. Priscilla swallowed. So it wasn't catalogued? Frank looked almost uneasy. This tape shouldn't exist. Not with this date. A sharp silence filled the room. Then he added quietly, "This was recorded hours before he died." The words pierced her. Her hands trembled. She watched as Frank checked the real condition. "It might be degraded," he warned. "These old tapes sometimes jam, or lose sound completely." But Priscilla wasn't hearing the warnings. All she could think was, if this is real, this could be the last thing he ever recorded. His last thoughts, his last feelings, his last truth. Her heart pressed against her ribs. Frank connected the tape deck to a small speaker and rewound the reel slowly. The soft clicking of old machinery filled the room, mixed with the faint hum of the air vent. The world outside faded away. Even the distant singing from fans outside Graceland seemed to fall into a hush. Her breathing shortened. Would she hear the voice she lost 20 years ago? Or would the tape deliver something she wasn't ready to face? Frank looked up. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" Priscilla nodded, though her chest felt tight. "If I wait, I'll lose my nerve." She sat down, leaning forward, elbows on her knees. Her fingers curled together. She had heard his voice thousands of times, on records, on interviews, on home videos. But this felt different. This felt personal in a way that scared her. Frank placed his finger on the play button. Priscilla closed her eyes. The machine clicked. A long, low hiss filled the room, like a storm passing through an empty field. Static crackled. The sound of old tape struggling to breathe. She opened her eyes. This wasn't Elvis's voice. Not yet. Just noise. Distorted. Unsteady. She leaned closer, her heartbeat quickening, afraid she might miss even a single moment if she blinked. "What is that?" she whispered. Frank frowned. Could be the recorder starting up. Or something. He moved across the mic. The hiss grew louder, then softer, then steadier. Priscilla gripped the edge of her chair. What would you do if a loved one's final words suddenly reappeared after 2 decades? Would you want to hear them, or fear what they might reveal? Her breath trembled. Then, beneath the static, something shifted. Not music, not movement. A faint sound, like someone drawing in a tired breath. Priscilla's heart stopped. It wasn't a malfunction. It wasn't background noise. It was him, a presence returning through time. She felt the air around her tighten. Because when she finally hit play, the first sound wasn't Elvis's voice. It was something stranger. The sound that drifted from the speaker didn't feel natural. It wasn't the usual tape hiss she'd heard on Elvis's old demos. This was deeper. A low rumble, like wind pushing against a window on a stormy night. Priscilla leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Frank adjusted the volume. "That's unusual," he murmured. Almost like the recorder was already running before he spoke. The static grew louder, swelling and fading like ocean waves. Beneath it, something faint flickered. A soft scrape, a tiny shuffle. The kind of sound a person makes when they're alone in a room and adjusting their seat. Priscilla felt her heart climb into her throat. "That's him," she whispered. Frank looked at her, puzzled. "The breathing." "Yes," she said. "That's Elvis." The realization hit her with a force she wasn't prepared for. This wasn't a studio recording. This wasn't a rehearsal. This wasn't staged for anyone's ears. This was Elvis in the dark, alone, talking into a recorder. And no one knew this tape existed. The static lingered, thick and heavy. Then, suddenly, a small thump, like a hand tapping the microphone. Priscilla's breath caught. And then it happened. A faint whisper drifted through the speaker. Too soft to understand. Too fragile to catch. But the tone reached something inside her that 20 years of distance could not erase. "Can you play that again?" she asked. Frank rewound a few seconds. The tape clicked, word, then resumed. The whisper came again, a broken string of sounds. Not words. Not yet. Priscilla felt tears forming before she could stop them. "Don't miss anything," she said quietly. Please. Frank nodded, his fingers steady but the look in his eyes showing he understood the gravity of this moment. This wasn't just a tape. This was history breathing again. This was a man who left the world too soon, speaking from a place no one expected. The whisper faded. The static returned. Then another sound surfaced, Elvis shifting the recorder. A soft scrape of plastic against wood. A tired exhale. Priscilla felt her chest tighten. She had heard that kind of breath before, during long nights when he couldn't sleep, when fame weighed too heavily, when the spotlight felt like a cage instead of a crown. The tape cracked again. This time his breath was closer, clearer. Priscilla felt her fingers tremble. Frank whispered, "This might be the last private audio he ever made." The weight of the statement fell over the room like a curtain. A heavy, silent truth. Thunder rumbled faintly outside Graceland as if the sky itself knew what was about to happen. The lights hummed. The air felt still. Even the fans outside seemed quieter now, their voices fading under a growing sense of anticipation. Then the recorder made a soft, sharp click. The kind it makes when someone adjusts their grip or rests their hand near the mic. Priscilla leaned in. "Come on, baby, just say something," she whispered. Her voice cracked. Another deep breath. Another soft shuffle. A pause so long she felt her heart stutter. Then he cleared his throat. A simple sound. A human sound. A sound she had heard thousands of times when he stepped to a microphone before a show or prepared to speak from the heart. But here, in this quiet room 20 years later, it felt like time folding in on itself. Her eyes filled. "That's him," she whispered again. "That's really him." A question slid into her mind with painful clarity. How do you prepare your heart for a voice you've been missing for 20 years? How do you stand still when a memory becomes real again? The air grew tight. Frank didn't speak. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. They both waited, frozen in a moment neither of them could have imagined. The static softened. The tape steadied. And then, at last, Elvis drew one more breath, and the real message began. Elvis's first full breath on the tape sounded heavier than anything Priscilla remembered. Not stage heavy. Not exhausted from touring heavy. Human heavy. The kind a person takes when they're alone and finally ready to tell the truth. The static softened, almost respectfully, as if giving him room. Then he spoke. "Midnight again," he murmured. "Can't sleep. Feels like the whole house is breathing except me." Priscilla shut her eyes. That was his voice. Fragile, raw, stripped of charm, fame, or performance. He continued, speaking softly, the way he used to when he talked to himself during long nights at Graceland. "I just need to slow down," he whispered. "Need to get right again." Frank glanced at Priscilla, but she didn't move. She couldn't. Every word felt like a hand reaching through time, brushing against her heart. On the tape, Elvis shifted again, the recorder scraping gently. Then he said something no fan ever heard him admit. "I'm scared." The room went still. Elvis Presley, the man who sold out arenas, who held 20,000 people in the palm of his hand, whispering fear into a recorder. It didn't sound like weakness. It sounded like honesty. He kept talking, voice trembling in and out of the static. "I keep thinking about the dream I had. Saw Graceland full of kids, running around, laughing. Maybe 20 years from now it'll feel like home again. Real home." Priscilla pressed her fingers to her lips. She remembered that dream. He mentioned it once, late at night in 1976. She never guessed he held on to it. Another breath from the tape. Soft, shaky. Then Elvis said something that sliced right through her. "Sometimes it feels like the noise won't stop. People wanting pieces of me. Pulling, pushing, asking. I just need quiet. Just for a little while." A quiet ache stirred in her chest. How many people walk through life carrying storms no one sees? How many hide their pain beneath smiles the world expects? He whispered again. "Maybe tomorrow I'll feel better. Maybe tomorrow I'll finally slow down." The word tomorrow hit her like a punch. Tomorrow never came. Frank glanced at her again. "You okay?" he asked softly. But she didn't answer. Not yet. Elvis spoke again, softer now. as if he were drifting into some memory only he could see. I just want to get right. For Lisa. For my family. Then his tone shifted. Not darker. Not brighter. Just different. Like he had reached a moment he didn't rehearse. I know I haven't said everything I should have said, he murmured. And the truth is, I don't even know where to begin. His breath wavered. Static crackled. The tape hummed. Then, without warning, Elvis let out a quiet, painful laugh. Funny, huh? A man sings for the whole world, but can't figure out how to speak to the people he loves. Priscilla felt her throat tighten. She remembered that laugh. Tired, gentle, and full of things he never said aloud. The tape clicked again as he adjusted it. I'm trying, he whispered. Trying to get better. Trying to come back to myself. For a moment, the room felt warm, like the air carried a memory. A stage light hum, a faint guitar string, a whisper of something sacred. Then, Elvis's voice dropped lower, almost like a confession. And there's one person I need to talk to before anything else. Priscilla's breath froze. Frank lowered the volume instinctively, sensing something heavy approaching. Elvis inhaled. Her name. The static trembled. The tape slowed. Priscilla's pulse pounded in her ears. She deserves to hear the truth. Her hands trembled, because she knew what was coming. She felt it before it arrived. And when Elvis finally said the name buried in the deepest part of his heart, it shattered her. The room felt frozen. Not cold, just still, like time itself paused to listen. On the tape, Elvis took a shaky breath. Then he whispered the name he had been circling around. Scylla. Priscilla's hand flew to her mouth. Her knees weakened. Her heart dropped. He had said her name the same way he used to during quiet mornings in the early years. Soft, warm, full of unspoken things. Hearing it now, 20 years later, felt like a doorway to a memory she wasn't ready to reopen. Elvis continued, his voice cracking like thin glass. Scylla, if you ever hear this, I hope you'll understand. Priscilla blinked hard, fighting the burn in her eyes. She wasn't prepared for this. She wasn't prepared to be pulled into his final hours, into a moment he never shared with anyone. He spoke again, slower this time. I've been thinking a lot about us. Frank looked away, giving her privacy even though they were in the same room. It was the kind of respect Elvis commanded without ever asking. Static softened around Elvis's next words. I'm sorry. The silence that followed that single sentence hurt more than the sentence itself. He didn't specify what for. He didn't need to. He was sorry for everything and nothing. For the pieces of life fame tore apart. For moments they lost. For dreams that didn't survive the spotlight. Priscilla clutched the arms of her chair. On the tape, Elvis exhaled shakily. I wish I could go back, he whispered. Wish I could redo some moments. Be better. Be calmer. Be the man you deserved more of. Her breath hitched. A single tear slid down her cheek. Elvis cleared his throat again. A soft, tired sound. You gave me Lisa, he said, voice warming. You gave me the greatest gift I ever had in this world. Priscilla closed her eyes. She could picture him saying it. Sitting alone at Graceland, recorder in hand, trying to speak truths he never found the courage to say face to face. He wasn't performing. He wasn't polishing his words. He wasn't thinking about fans or fame. He was just a man trying to reach the one person who once knew him better than anyone. Static drifted in and out. I'm trying to get better, he whispered, trying to slow down, trying to breathe right again. Her heart squeezed. He sounded so tired, so human. Then he said a sentence so simple, so heartbreaking. Priscilla felt her breath leave her body. I'll call tomorrow. A single tear fell onto the recorder in front of her. Tomorrow. He had said tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. Frank stayed silent beside her, giving her the space to feel every word. The tape continued, the reel turning softly like a fragile heartbeat. Then Elvis whispered something even quieter, something almost lost in the static. I don't want to leave things unfinished. Priscilla wiped her face, but the tears kept coming. She could feel every layer of emotion pressing down. Memory, regret, love, grief, all tangled together. A gentle knock sounded from somewhere outside the archive room. A fan's muffled singing echoed faintly through the walls. The world kept going, unaware of the moment happening in this small, dim space. Elvis inhaled again. "And if you ever hear this, just know I'm grateful. For everything. Even the hard parts." Priscilla felt her throat close. He paused. A long, heavy pause. Felt like he was gathering strength for one final truth. "I miss the way we used to talk," he whispered. "No cameras. No noise. Just us." Static washed over the speaker, but his words pushed through. "I hope one day you'll hear this and not feel pain but peace." Priscilla pressed a shaking hand to her chest. How do you carry love frozen in a moment someone never got to finish? How do you listen to a goodbye a person never meant to be their last? A tiny click sounded on the tape, the sound of him adjusting the recorder one last time. Frank leaned in. "There's still a bit left," he said softly. Priscilla nodded, though her heart felt like it might break. Because the tape wasn't finished. And the last part wasn't meant for the world. But the tape holds one last surprise. The tape kept rolling, but now the reel moved slower, as if it knew it was reaching the end. Elvis drew in one more breath, softer this time, the kind of breath a person takes when they've finally decided what they need to say. "Maybe 20 years from now," he whispered, "this place will feel light again. Maybe it won't hurt so much." Priscilla's eyes blurred. 20 years. The exact number of years that had passed between his death and this moment in the archive room. Outside, candles flickered along the Graceland gates, just like he had imagined. He went on, his voice almost fading into the static. "If you're listening to this, it means I didn't get the chance to fix things. But I hope you did. I hope you found peace. I hope Lisa did too." The words sank into Priscilla like stones dropped into deep water. Heavy, quiet, final. One last pause. Then his closing line, so soft she almost missed it. "Don't let the world remember just the noise. Remember the man." The tape clicked. Silence. No final song. No dramatic sign-off. Just that one request. Priscilla sat still. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't move to wipe the tears from her face. She wasn't just hearing a voice from the past. She was hearing what he wished the future would become. What do we owe the people who never got the chance to finish their own story? How do we honor the parts of them the world never saw? When news of the tape finally surfaced, it spread faster than anyone expected. A short clip of Priscilla talking about it aired on a late-night special. And within days, fans worldwide were replaying every word. The internet filled with comments, theories, and simple thank yous. Outside Graceland, visitors began leaving not only flowers, but handwritten notes that read, "We remember the man." Some tucked tiny cassette drawings into the gate. Others wrote down the date of the recording and circled it in red, as if giving his last midnight a place on the calendar it never had. Letters arrived from people who had never met Elvis but felt like they truly knew him better after hearing that private fear, that hope for peace. A few said the message helped them forgive someone in their own lives. Others said it reminded them to say the words they'd been holding back. The tape became more than a relic. It became a mirror. Frank helped create a transcript, but the physical cassette stayed with Priscilla. She didn't frame it. She didn't put it under glass. Instead, she kept it in a small private drawer in a quiet upstairs room, next to a folded scarf and a single black and white photo. She didn't play it often. She didn't need to, because by then, she knew every breath, every pause, every crack in his voice. And to this day, Priscilla keeps the tape in a private drawer, except for one reason. Priscilla kept the tape tucked away for months after that night. Not out of secrecy, out of protection, for herself, for Elvis, for the quiet truth he left behind. But grief doesn't disappear. It settles. It shifts. And eventually it asks to be understood. One evening, months later, she sat alone in her living room, holding the cassette in her hand. The house was still. The world felt far away. She thought about the years they shared, the mistakes they made, the moments they got right, and the battles he fought in silence. And she knew. The story wasn't hers to bury. It was his to finish. When she finally decided to share the message publicly, she didn't call a press conference. She didn't sell the story. She simply told it softly and honestly, in an interview meant to honor the 20th anniversary of his passing. Her voice trembled only once, when she said his final request. "Remember the man." The reaction stunned everyone. Millions of people watched the segment within days. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was human. Fans who had only seen Elvis under stage lights were hearing him in the dark. Afraid, hopeful, trying one last time to make things right. The world didn't lean in because it was a secret. The world leaned in because it was real. Candles appeared at Graceland gates. Messages poured in from around the world. People wrote about their own unfinished goodbyes, their own regrets, their own quiet hopes. The story became bigger than Elvis, bigger than Priscilla. It became about all of us, the way we try, fail, forgive, and keep going. And that's why her reaction went viral, not from shock, but from understanding. If the story touched you, share it with someone who still believes legends don't feel pain like the rest of us. And tell us below, what part of Elvis's final message stayed with you the most? Your voice keeps these memories alive and keeps his humanity from being forgotten. Watch the next episode.